Welcome to the DBZ United Podcast. We're here talking today about which Ginyu is the best Ginyu, and we're especially going to focus on what's working and what's not working in the current meta. So I'm here with Mark and Steve from DBZ United. So, guys, say hello.
Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Mark.
Hey, it's Steve. How's it going?
And I'm TJ. I don't know if I said that already, but we'll just jump
Totally.
right into talking about Ginyus.
All
So,
right.
all right, guys. So let's start with Mark. So, what Ginyu are you liking right now? I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, is it a little obvious? I'm definitely gonna go with Orange Ginyu. It's got beats, it's got defense, it's got pretty much everything you need. You can snipe cards, you got crits, and you can kill allies, setups, drills, pretty much everything.
Yeah, see, I'm gonna have to argue with you on that though. I mean, Black in you may not be as powerful with the energy beats or anything like that, but it does have a lot of strong attacks. And dismantling someone's deck before they have a chance to use it is probably the most potent way to run a deck.
That's true, but you have to actually get started in order to do that. See, Ginyu can come straight out of the gate and just hit you for 17, 18 in orange rather. And I know you could do it in black, but it's a lot less likely when you're pulling setups and drills. Which I'm not really doing it in my build. You would think I'd be pulling a lot of drills, but I'm not really getting that.
Hmm. Yeah, but I mean, in the same respect, I mean, you do have drills set up. I mean, I don't run that many drills and setups in my black in you deck, so I'm not really drawing dead.
Well, yeah, but typically in a regular black, you would see two searching techniques, a smoothness, maybe two smoothness, two power ups. What else? Maybe a radiating drill. Then you have probably more than the basic five allies. You probably are also running Zarbon and Frieza for the extra management. So I mean, there are a lot of dead cards.
Well, you think so? I don't know about that. I figure probably most Ginyus, with the exception of Blue, are pretty similar right now in the fact that you're probably running probably about a dozen dead if you consider allies dead. You've probably average numbers between 5 and 6 allies, depending on how you feel about Nap and Frieza. And then it's even in like probably some of the good black Ginyus that we've seen so far, such as the one that won the 1K in California.
Hmm.
You really only see like I think that one was running maybe six.
Yeah, it was
I'm
like
gonna say
six setups.
non-combats as if we're playing Scoresy, but really I mean like setups.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it, though. I didn't have a chance to actually look over his deck yet, so I brushed through the orange one, but I didn't really get a chance to go over them.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. I was playing an Orange Guinea yesterday, which was sort of similar to your build, Mark. And I mean, I knocked out like four of his allies in two combats, banished. I pulled out a bunch of drills. I started banishing drills with the deck, and I pulled out all the overpowering attacks with the block adaptation. So I mean, it's dependent on draws, and that's really the beauty of the game is that it's luck based as well as skill based. So every
Yeah,
time you play, it could completely change.
true, but you're also
For
teching
fun.
cards you need, which I'm not seeing in a lot of black decks. Like, you'll see Withering Fire, but you're not seeing Energetic Left Blasts, at least from the builds that I've seen. No one's really running those. But black
Uh,
has no, aside from Declaration, no answers to allies.
no, I
So
love that card. I love that card.
exactly. I mean, in
Yeah.
black, it's still a free attack for 2 and 1, so there's no reason not to run it. And I could definitely see black in you being really good. I currently maybe I've just my favorite's orange, so I'm saying it's orange, but I have to give it to orange in you. It could just
I
hit
mean,
so hard so early.
Yeah, well, I guess you got to look at the all the matchups in the current meta though. Like, all right, so you have to plan for basically Rainbow Ginyu, you have to plan for Namekian Piccolo, and you have to plan for a couple varieties of Black Krill. And we're actually seeing the aggro one become more and more popular as things go on. And we've seen players such as Saul, who we saw in New Hampshire and also in our New York case events, playing an aggro Crone with the original starter level one and still do really well. So you got to plan for both of those varieties of Black Crone.
Yeah,
hmm
yeah, that's very
So,
true.
so you got to see basically what matches up better against the entire meta. So let's start with I guess the mirror matches against the Ginyus. Yeah, what do you think the pros and cons are of playing against other Ginyus? And we'll start with I guess the orange Ginyu that Mark introduced.
I would say that it's the pros. All right, obviously, Orange Ginyu has the orange stare down, which is an answer to ally setups of drills. So you also have distracting beam. So after you use an orange stare down, you could stack a distracting beam. Depending on the type of drills you're running, you can even, if you have a drill in hand, you can even pop a possession if you have it on the table to get the stare down back. There's a lot of recursion in orange. There's orange revenge. You could always run D-ball 7. You can run visiting the past. You also have Raccoon, which is also recursion, which is one of my favorite allies actually. A lot of people leave them on the board, but once you hit level 3, you shouldn't have left them on the board. I would say that orange is probably the best for the mirror match. It very rarely loses to a blue Ginyu. I lost to actually Steve's Black Ginyu, but I kind of rage quit on that one. So it was after a long day of just getting wrecked. So we actually need to finish that game up and see what would actually happen.
Oh, well, I mean, I think that Orange Ginyu's strongest strength, juggling is definitely good. And I mean, having those cards like Orange Stare Down, I mean, that's like one of the best cards just because it can banish all those different types of setups and, allies and such. But, as time goes on, I mean, we're talking into the future now, there's going to be other cards and other sets that are going to do that as well. Although it's nice that it's all on one card. But, I mean, Black has an answer to everything because Black can just take out pieces. And that's really what Black's built around, is dismantling stuff. So regardless of what I'm playing, even with searching techniques, if I'm playing the mirror match, I can knock out 2 allies immediately, especially if I draw it early. And that's really, deadly to a lot of Ginyu decks, because right now a lot of them are focusing on building completely around allies, although I'm trying to get away from that a little bit.
Yeah, I think the best Ginyu doesn't focus on allies right now.
Right, I mean, even to that point, like if I energetic left blast like your Goldo, and you went into combat thinking that Goldo was going to be your defense, and I threw like a black energy web at you, that shuts down your deck for that turn, because your deck's completely energy focused. I mean, in terms of blue decks, if you're fighting a blue deck and you really can't get through, if they're really defensive, I can take a step back and just start milling them to death and trying to knock things out and take pieces out. So I can kind of switch gears either way, whereas I feel like certain other deck types, like Orange specifically, are very aggressive focused, and it's harder to take a step back because you have to do the damage. You don't have as many cards to passively damage their deck, so I think it's more suited to that, and also the other big 3 in the meta.
DJ, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it kind of depends on what stage of the game you're in. It's because if you're looking at a Black Ginyu, that can jump out. If, for instance, if Black Ginyu gets to go first and it draws well against a mirror match against basically any color of Ginyu, that's going to be really dangerous because it's like Steve said, it could start pulling out the key cards, which will usually be the allies, but could also be things like overpowering attacks if you have a scout maneuver, etc., etc. So if the Black Ginyu gets an early start, it could basically ruin the other Ginyu's day. But if the Black Ginyu, let's say, goes second and the other Ginyu gets set up, then Black's going to have a harder time removing those things from the board, especially if the opponent's Ginyu decides to make its first ally search for a Nappa, and you basically render the declarations useless, and you're basically leaving them to if they can hit an energetic left blast or not. So that's sort of the pluses and minuses of the Black Ginyu. Orange is a little bit different because Orange is just going to be kind of a firefight. It's going to be who can throw more damage right away, and Orange could really only draw into the the Orange Stare Down. So Orange would rather you have the things on the board in the beginning because you could probably uppercut into that right away. So it becomes more a battle of what allies do you pick in the beginning and who gets an earlier start, who draws well in the beginning.
Yeah, but it was an interesting match I had yesterday. And again, showing the versatility of the Black Ginyu. I was playing that Orange Ginyu, not Mark's deck, but someone else's, and he ended up knocking out a couple of my allies, and what ended up happening during the course of the match was when I drew setups, I just discarded them because Nappa was out, so I used those cards for the mastery. And then the allies I didn't actually pull because whenever, I was thinking about doing it, I had a stare down or something like that, and I knew he had an orange stare down in his hand. So I ended up protecting myself till the very end, and I was slowly milling him to death. And I think I lost by 2 life cards, just because I didn't have endurance. And then I didn't have enough stages to pull an ally out at the very end to defend myself. But, I mean, it's interesting how I can almost completely, flip the table in terms of what the deck can do, because that's something I hadn't tried before. But he didn't know what to do with me because he had all his stuff all set up, and he's trying to remove things, and he's playing Withering Fires and stuff like that, and he's not actually doing anything to the deck. because I'm basically preventing him from doing it. And I mean, I'm losing cards that could have been helpful later on, but I couldn't manage to get rid of Nappa, so I mean, it wouldn't have made a difference anyway.
So, what do you guys think about the other colors of Ginyu? We haven't touched on blue or red Ginyu. That. What do you think of those decks? Their place in the meta, how competitive they are, and how they play against the other Ginyus?
That's interesting. I mean, I know that black and orange are the big ones focused on, but I think blue has a ton of merit. I mean, blue is the defensive style, or at least that's what it was built as, although I feel like it's more than one style built into one. I mean, if you build a semi-aggressive blue deck, you can stop most of their attacks, especially with the allies. Physical attacks really won't hit you. And then you can lay down incredible beats with all those +5 physical attacks and forget about it. Mark, thoughts?
Did Mark die in the first podcast? That would be a shame if we if we lost a member on podcast number 1.
Well, since Mark's not here right now, I mean, we could talk about how blue would do against orange. I mean, if you manage to keep them stage locked again, I mean, orange is the energy style.
Yeah, well, and that depends on how the blue Ginyu is built, because there's probably 3 or 4 different varieties if you think about it. You have energy beats with all the ally recursion. You could do it that way with things like Lunar Ray, and you could play, I don't know, blue battle readiness and bring out a bunch of allies and stuff. Mm-hmm. You could play. We saw at our initial case event in New York, we saw a bunch of blue Ginyus that played all 7 Dragon Balls, and that's a really interesting option, and that gives you access to things like Trap Strike. So you can go that way. You could just go a pure physical beats. You could also use blue overpowering drill and make it sort of anger based and just try to MPPV. So you probably have a handful of blue Ginyu builds, and when someone just lays down the MP and the Mastery, you don't know exactly what you're going to see on turn 1.
Right. See, and I wish red was like that. I feel like red as a style isn't complete yet, even with Ginyu. Ginyu adds this, a dynamic where it makes red, semi-playable. But I feel like you really have to go a little bit aggressive on red and either go for MPPV or deck out, as opposed to, Dragon Ball or Survival, in the sense that you can just withstand.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Mark, were you going to say something? No, it's I guess Mark has perished. That's fine. we'll move on without our fallen leader.
I mean, you made a really interesting red Ginyu deck, TJ, and I mean it works really well. I mean, we played a couple of times, and it's pretty brutal when it goes down.
You're talking about when I made the triple threat, or just the one I've been playing recently?
I think the one that you tweaked up is actually more effective because there's less dead draws, especially in red. You need to be able to draw, cards you can use right away.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was really going for. My the latest variety of it, I was not really going to MPPV in it. I just kind of wanted to have enough anger to get to level 3, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then once you get there and you have the buff and your allies are able to make actions for you, at least your Ginyu Force ones, which are the most important. Mm-hmm. Once you have that, you have the ability. Red has a bunch of combo cards and the cards that can chain together, things like Red Heel Kick and Red Heating Beams. And Red Left Bolt definitely gets you another card. So once you start going down that road and you have a Ginyu that could put together a bunch of actions, that it makes it almost as aggressive, if not more aggressive, than an orange Ginyu. And so that's very interesting. And you also get a bunch of critical effects in red, so that gives you some board options against everyone out there, whether it's Krillin and Namekian and Piccolo with the Dragon Balls, or whether you're just picking off allies against the fellow Ginyu. Mm-hmm. So I think it's not as stable, and some of the cards aren't as powerful, which is why right now, 2 sets in, Red Ginyu can't really be the top of the meta, but it can still beat any deck on any given day if it draws well.
Oh yeah, and I think that, depending on the build, I mean, there's probably really awful builds, but I think it's the case for a lot of stuff. I mean, Ginyu is the end-all, be-all in set 1, but I mean, even figuring out, its kryptonite, if you will, which is still its kryptonite now. You know, the Trunks Saiyan, Vegeta Saiyan before Wallbreaker was a brutal deck against Ginyu if you drew right the first couple turns. But yeah, I mean, I'm really hoping that Red gets just a couple more cards, maybe some more endurance. That'd be nice.
Yeah, Red definitely needs the endurance. I think right now the problem with Red is that you have a lot of the endurance is on physical blocks, but in Ginyu you typically don't need very many physical blocks, so it puts you in a weird situation when you're building the deck.
That's true too. I mean, it depends on I guess the meta for those decisions too, because I mean, in a heavy anti-Ginyu meta, you're going to need physical blocks because there's going to be people putting a lot of tech in to just knock the allies out right away, which is now the endless struggle that I think we're sitting in.
Yeah, that's true. It seems to me like Ginyu is the most powerful deck on balance, but what happens is that Ginyu also has the most hard counters, so you could run to a situation where you get taken apart right away.
That's absolutely true. I mean, that goes into the whole question though with Ginyu, I guess, is that can you get enough actions to out-action your opponent before your opponent out-actions you? It's kind of like a race too, though, just like Orange Ginyu.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons I prefer Black actually in the current meta is because I think Black has a more interesting mid-game against. It's not just Ginyu, which we were talking about the mirror, but if we start talking about the other decks in the meta, once you start talking about Namekian Piccolo and Black Krillin, that's where I think the Black Ginyu could really shine because it's like you said, Steve, you can start pulling cards out that they need, and in those decks there's only a handful of cards that'll really mess you up. So once you can get to those, you could really even the odds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess since we're talking about that too, I mean, how do you feel about you were talking about the two different Krillins. How do you feel about the SDCC versus the regular starter Krillin? Like, what do you think is more potent?
Well, it's I have to say, full disclosure, I just started playing the typical SDCC stall variant recently, which I'm kind of surprised at how much I like it, just because you're always in control of the game. But at the same time, it can get a little stale when all you want to do is block and get out of combat. But but I would say, that's a very powerful deck. Like I've had great success in the half dozen games I've played with it so far. But the reason I'm saying that I've tested that is to also say that I haven't tested the aggressive version very much. So I'm not totally sure. I guess my feeling with that is that the reason I prefer the stall variant is because it's always in that one gear. It's always going to stall and try to find a Destructo Disc. It's just going to do that pretty much the entire game. Whereas the aggressive one, you have to be a very skilled player and you have to have a finely tuned build because you have to change gears. You have to go from being very aggressive to very passive depending on what your hand is and what you've drawn. And you also have the additional dynamic of should you try to level up or not and get to level 2 for that attack. So there's more variables. So I think that makes it definitely harder to pilot, harder to build, and harder to recommend as a top tier deck. But if you can unlock its full potential, then it could be really dangerous because Black has a lot of very strong energy attacks, and since he's a hero, you also get access to Crushing Beam, so you can really do a lot of work with that.
Yeah, it's kind of brutal. I mean, I'm kind of partial to the starter Krillin myself. I think that's because that was the one that took me down in the New Hampshire case event. I mean, the benefits of being able to level up, or at least, yeah. I mean, I don't think there's really any way you can level up in the SDCC build, at least the generic one that's been going around the internet. I mean, leveling up gives you access to more powerful energy attacks, and it's really, in the spirit of Black, it's another bailout. Because when you're playing against somebody, and I was actually playing Saul's regular starter Krillin Black, and I had him stage locked, which is an interesting thing for my Black Raditz to be doing, but somehow I managed it. and I was in control of the game until one combat when he hit me for a Destructo Disc and then managed to level up after that. Because then he had the stages to hit me again and again and again. I just couldn't stop it. So, I mean, my view of black is to be very modular, to be able to change and adapt. And that's the biggest thing I like about black decks is that you can switch back and forth, or at least you can build to switch back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the aggressive Black Krillin has potential, but you have to build it. It has to be perfect, because if you draw too many attacks when you need to defend, you could be in trouble, and if you draw too many blocks when you can start to swing and go on the offensive, you're in trouble. So you have to have all the pieces have to line up just right. It's a hard. You can't really net deck that one. I've seen a lot of people try to build it online, and you can see some of the flaws in the builds. It's hard to get that one right.
Yeah. Well, and again, it goes back to that luck aspect, too. What cards you draw in which combat? What cards did they draw? I mean, it's kind of like, jumping back and forth between that and then Ginyu and drawing a parallel. You said that you don't have to run that many physical defenses in Ginyu, and I'm actually not in my Ginyu, and I'm sure that, most Ginyu players aren't running as many physicals, or physical defenses, I should say. But if for whatever reason you can't get your allies out or they get knocked out really quick and you're trying to, pull people out desperately to absorb the stages, you're kind of screwed because you're not drawing those physical defenses because they're not there.
Yeah, well, thankfully, I mean, when you look across the top of the meta, at least, there aren't very many physical decks. The only thing that can really jump out at you is a blue Ginyu built with a lot of physical beats, which can happen. We've seen that occasionally, but it's a very small piece of the meta. So typically you're fine if you could even run, only 3 or 4 physical blocks in most Ginyu builds and probably be okay.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's interesting. Ginyu's new for me. I mean, I'm the guy that likes to go against the grain. So when everyone was like, "Oh, Ginyu's top," we're gonna run Ginyu, and everyone was running Ginyu, I said I wasn't gonna run Ginyu, and I figured I'd give it a try now. Now that it's died down a bit, and it's definitely a really, really different and interesting way to play because there's a lot more thought behind it too. Ginyu. For all the bashing Ginyu takes, I think it's a deck that does require a specific build as well, and I think it requires a more skilled player to more effectively pilot, although Ginyu does cover up some of your mistakes more than other MPs would. It's very prone to misplaying if you're not sure about what you're doing.
Yeah, and that bit where you said cover up mistakes, that's definitely where Mark would jump in if you didn't die. So... So, I guess while we wait for Mark to get out, I'll jump in for him and say that, a lot of these top-tier decks, one of the things that makes them top-tier is they have great synergy, and they're very friendly for new players to pilot. Like, Ginyu, you automatically generate the ally with his attack, which,
right.
Obviously, like you said, picking the right one in the right situation takes a lot of skill, but just the fact that you can get card advantage right away makes it easier for new players.
That's true. That is true, and it's even in the fact that it's an action. So you can stall if you needed to, even if you knew they were going to get rid of it or something like that, and you had plans for something else. So, that totally, I totally see that. I think other decks like the Piccolo deck. I think the Mechian Piccolo is something that you can completely autopilot without knowing what you're doing, and I say that being of that experience because I'm also experimenting with that now that I'm trying to broaden my horizons out of low tier decks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if only you can make a Namekian Raditz, right?
Yeah, no. You know what? I'm gonna make Namekian Nail work. Don't worry. You guys just watch and see. I'll be posting like.
Oh, hey, look who joined the party. So, Mark, we just covered all the bases for you. We've been talking about all different colors of Ginyu. We made a quick pit stop to talk about the Black Krillins. Okay. And we mentioned for you that Ginyu can cover up mistakes for new players, so we got your rant out of the way there.
Thanks, appreciate
it. So we're moving right along here. So I think we talked about all the colors of Ginyu pretty well, although we can come back to blue for a second. What do you guys think is the best variety of blue Ginyu? What's the one that scares you the most if you see it? The beats?
Anti-ally. the backbreaker or blue backbreak, whatever it is, for 5 stages. Shuffle in an ally. You got blue betrayal. Any beat down will keep another Ginyu down first. So I mean, like a non-setup heavy, but just like a beats heavy Ginyu is a blue Ginyu rather is pretty scary. But nobody's really running that variety, which is why I say it's not the best Ginyu.
Yeah, I mean, I think that playing those more techie cards definitely helps. I mean, you have to play Blue Betrayal, but like, I'm a big fan of beats. I mean, I was originally a Saiyan player. I'm going to try to make Saiyan work in set 3 again, but you know, blue, what is it? Blue Face Crunch or Face Smash, right? I think that's what it is.
No, it's Face Crunch.
Oh, was it? I was right the first time. All right, good.
Yes.
I mean, that Blue Lunge. You know, what is it? Even I can't remember the double Blue Trap Strike, which isn't as powerful, but I mean, you play a couple Dragon Balls, you can play it again. I'm all for physical beats in that sense of control. And that scares the hell out of me when you're playing with someone that can just keep making actions and keep absorbing your attacks.
Yeah, well, and the other thing with the blue physical Ginyu is it could also buff a lot because you have Birders can give you +2. You can you can play Blue Biting Drill to give you another +2, and then if you can activate Guldo, get a +2 and then +2 life. And all of a sudden in those physicals, you start to turn into a Blue Godku in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, and Lifting Drill too, +1 life card. So
yeah, absolutely.
Get out of here! Like, this is ridiculous. Oh, blue. Blue.
So why do you think that is? Why do you think that right now across the country we're seeing black and orange top a lot? At the North Kai, the finals was actually black Ginyu and orange Ginyu. So why do you think we aren't seeing blue either do as well or show up as often?
I don't know if the build's quite right yet. I don't know. There's a lot of really good cards, and there's a lot of ways, just like you said, TJ, to build the deck. So I think people are trying to find the identity of the deck first. I mean, black, there's a couple of ways to build it, although most people are straying away from the physical beats, which I'm going to, eventually investigate, because there's some really, really powerful physical attacks in black. But in, the same respect, orange, I mean, there's a couple techie physical attacks, like orange, orange launcher with the cred and stuff like that.
Right.
But it's really energy focused. So, I mean, there's less variety, so it's easier to streamline your deck and make it more effective. And I think once people actually figure out and focus on specific, play styles with blue, that blue will be even more effective.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like some of the blue versions I've seen, whether I've played against them on Octagon, whether you see a deck list on Retro, or whatever the case may be, it seems like it's kind of a potluck, it's a little bit of everything, and it feels like some of these decks would be better served to focus on one main idea, and that would make them really dominant.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Mark? Or
Mark just went away from the computer for a bit again. He's sending out the distress signals to us on Facebook.
Oh, okay. I didn't see the smoke signal.
Yeah, he's firing off the flare gun, telling us to continue on in his wake, so I guess we'll keep doing that.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think, blue has such potential. I just think that blue doesn't know what it wants to be, and it's a good and bad thing. I mean, I always joke about it. I think that blue has better physical, beats than Saiyan, which is, a big physical deck, and it's obviously the defensive style, so it's really good at that. I mean, even in respect to recycling cards, you can recycle cards pretty well on blue. So there's a lot of opportunity to be almost any style. I mean, even with overpowering, Joe, if you're playing a villain, Ginyu, for example, you can MPPV over a red deck, which is like brutal because red's supposed to be the anger deck. So I mean, how do you build it?
Yeah, and that's the question. I mean, I've tried a few varieties of it. I really enjoyed the one version I have, which is all focused on the overpowering drill and playing the copy blocks and getting that benefit from the drill as well to get unstoppable attacks. So that was a lot of fun, but it's like we've been saying, you need to focus on one main idea with the blue Ginyu rather than just try to tech a little bit of everything, because if you do that, then other colors are probably better, and you're probably better off just playing a black Ginyu anyway.
Right. I mean, I wonder if there's anything that, can go into red right now to make it super effective, or if it's still going to be, inconsistent like we've seen.
What do you mean, building with the current card pool, or are you just speculating for set 3?
Well, I'm thinking about the current card pool because we're still, a month out, or actually a little over a month. So, I'm not living in the future quite yet to start building until I start seeing set 3 cards.
Yeah, until we start seeing official previews, it's impossible to say really what you could possibly want from set 3.
I'm just saying, I wonder if there's things that we've missed, for Red in terms of build strategy for now that would make it more effective, or if there's a, different play style that we could kind of tap into.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, there could be, there are a few different possibilities. I saw someone was bringing the Red Ginyu ball idea back on Retro, and our friend Aaron tagged me in that post, and you'll see him, Aaron, Mr. Waffles. He'll be coming on the podcast in later episodes. So I'm sure some of you listening, if anyone listens, are familiar with him. But he referred me over to that, and I was thinking it might be really interesting if you made a Red Ginyu that was just entirely focused on the Dragon Ball aspect, and you just played all of the automatic crits with the things like Red City Destruction, Red Emergency, Red Knee Lift, the list goes on. And you just did it that way, and all you tried to do is win by Dragon Ball. I think it would at least be amusing, even if it didn't work.
Oh, yeah, that'd be hilarious.
I might have to build that and bring that to locals just to see what happens.
I feel like that's almost like a troll deck. I don't even know what's going to happen now, but I'm going to run by MVP3.
Yeah. Well, and what happens when you run these decks with all criticals, it actually ends up being a very effective deck against Ginyu because you start to critical away the allies when you don't need to get your Dragon Balls back.
Well, that's true, too, yeah.
So it starts playing well against... It's actually surprising how well it can... I mean, it usually doesn't win against the top of the meta decks, but it really bothers them when you have that many critical effects, especially against that. And also, Namekian Piccolo, you can pin its anger down for a little while, which is the one thing that can bother it. If you can stick it on level 1 for a while, it can still win, but it really, really wants to get to level 2 in Namekian Piccolo.
Right. I mean, even, if it's a stall tactic to get a wall breaker out,
Yeah, that's true also. If you can just keep them at bay for a little while, although the wall breaker won't do anything against Black Krillin, but I guess that's another story for another day.
Oh, boy.
But with Red Ginyu in the typical builds, that I don't know. I mean, the one thing I like to do with it also is to... The big MVP for me in my Red Ginyu builds is to play Red Burning Rage. The setup where you get your attacks, you gain an anger, your attacks deal +1 life for the remainder of combat, and your opponent can't use endurance for the remainder of combat. That's a really big one for me, and I've seen some other Red Ginyu decks use that effectively. I think when we were in New Hampshire, Red Ginyu actually made it to the top 8 out of 34, and I'm sure that was one of the key cards, at least from what I was able to see on the field. It even took out a black SDCC Krillin in the top 16 in the Red Ginyu.
Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, that's definitely, as of right now, just because of the state of the meta with Wall Breaker, especially, you have to play, that setup to be able to actually crit it off. I mean, I know it's very luck-based in terms of when people hit Endurance, but everyone's trying to play Endurance in their decks to protect themselves, and then when you're doing 4 cards consistently, because of it, you're screwed.
Yeah, and well, what happens in Ginyu, and also basically just Red in general, is going from 4 life to 5 life with that 1 buff turns a lot of things that wouldn't normally critical into automatic crits when they have no endurance. So you have Ginyu's level 1 and 2s will turn into criticals. You have Enrage Blast can turn into a critical if you're running that in your Red Ginyu. Possibly even Red Energy Blast if you're willing to take the risk in your Red Ginyu. All those things will go from 4 to 5 in an automatic critical. So that gives you a lot of options to punch out of a wall breaker if you can just trigger a Red Burning Rage.
Right, that makes it more versatile in terms of, defending from other decks like Black that would take it apart and pull out your shoulder grabs or your static shots and stuff like that.
Yeah, eventually they have to leave you something, and I figure most Black players would leave the Red Burning Rage in, I would think, but you never know.
Well, it all depends. I mean, what they've knocked out first, what's in the discard, what they're most afraid of. I think that depends on, what happens in previous matchups that you have with people that play Red or whatever style that you're picking out of. I mean, I can tell you that for Krillin, I'm almost always pulling Destructo discs out, just because of my experience with the recursion rate with the Destructo discs.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Maybe we could get into that. We talked a little bit about which Ginyus play well against each other, but we could also talk about the rest of that meta, so we can move on to Krillin a little bit. Which Ginyu would you rather have if you're playing against the Black Krillins out there?
Which Ginyu would I rather have for Black Krillin? I'm probably gonna lean towards Black. I still like the aspect of being able to dismantle decks. Pulling out the key cards like we were saying, Destructo Disc, even searching, maneuvering. Searching. What is it? Scout maneuver.
Scout maneuver, searching technique, those type of things.
Yeah. I mean, to take away their ability to pull your deck apart. I mean, even getting rid of upward dodges if you're at that point, where you're trying to prevent them from buffing any attacks that would normally crit. I mean, the opportunities with that are endless. And then again, when you're stuck in a position where you don't have stages, or you're looking at a big field in terms of, them dropping declarations and power-ups, and that you're not going to be able to do anything, at least you can switch gears and maybe, throw a quick foreshadowing at them and make a mill, or be able to, Black Corruption them, at a turn, so that you can still hit them while they're technically in control.
Yeah, I mean, I would generally agree with that in terms of Black is probably the worst enemy for Black Krillin, because Black Krillin is so focused on recurring a few key cards with, Destruction, Destructo Disc, Time is a Warrior's Tool, possibly Foreshadowings. I know you can only use them once, but if they fall into the discard, you could always get them back. And so if you start to take those away in a Black deck, you force the Krillin to grind out of the game till the very end and just try to avoid all the combats and hope it comes down to the last few life cards, which is tough. But I'm also going to recommend that if you're going against a lot of Black Krillins, I would actually put in a vote for Orange Ginyu, and I'm sure Mark would as well, even though he's not here right now. He's currently indisposed.
I am back.
Hey, Mark. So we might as well get your take on this. I was just saying, we talked a lot about all the varieties of Ginyu and which Ginyus play well against each other, which ones you would rather have, etc., etc. And now we're looking at the rest of the top tier, and we're saying, what Ginyu would you like against Black Krillin? Both the SDCC variety, which some lovingly refer to as the Valdez, and also the aggressive variety, which we've seen piloted by people like Saul. So Steve obviously put in his vote for Black Ginyu, and that has a lot of merit. But I was actually going to support Orange Ginyu as well, and since you're here, I figured you could talk about that.
Against the SDCC, I'd probably go Black. Black has the tools to dismantle that. You just get a foreshadowing on the Destructo Discs, and it's pretty much shut down. You're going to have enough attacks to get through the defense, and you could probably do that with Orange, but Black's going to be better against the SDCC. But against a regular aggressive one, I'd rather have Orange.
Yeah, well, the reason why I was going to support Orange is, from what I've seen, even going back to the Set 1 meta, is Orange Ginyu is probably still at least 50-50 against the SDC Krillin, because it can jump out early before that can get set up. So if you can get to a Black Krillin before it finds a smoothness drill and before it starts to set up its board, you could really start laying down some beats early, and especially in Orange, because you get access to Orange Uppercut, and that'll get you your tutor, and you can start getting your allies out right away.
That's definitely true, but the whole thing is you still have a built-in anti-Ginyu with your power, which is why you never want to get off. So, I mean, unless you can get up to 3 pretty quickly, or at least 2, eventually he's going to start to level out, get rid of your allies, he's going to drop the 7 ball and get rid of your... he's going to get his D-discs back, so, getting an early lead doesn't matter when he can just level out mid-game, which is typically what they do. Unless you have Devastating Blows, and then you're fine. That's the best way to put it. I mean, Devastating Blows are still really good cards. I'm kind of trying to find a spot for them in Orange Ginyu right now.
Yeah, D-Blow. Yeah. I mean, Orange Ginyu, man. I mean, the thing with Orange Ginyu that's so potent, which is why it's a top-tier deck now against most decks, and I think against Krillin as well, is that it's all about actions. I mean, drawing into, 3 attacks, having a defense, having 2 other attacks, being able to gain anger depending on who you're playing. Like if you're playing Zarbon, it's just brutal. And then having all the stages to pay for all the attacks too. Plus, if you have an aura drill out, that's what gets it.
Attacks, but you're doing a lot of damage with each attack. Because everything, I mean, if you look at Precise Shot, it does base of 3, so it's going to be buffed to 4. If you have an aura drill, it does 6. So you do 6 life cards of damage, and then you get to snipe a card on hit, which is awesome. And then you have Dandrill, you get 2 cards. So you're hitting hard, and it's really hard. It's a lot harder than most styles, because while Black has +1/+1, it doesn't really have anything to buff it except upward dodge, whereas you can pretty much buff every single one of your energy attacks in Orange.
Yep.
So that's pretty much where we stand on that. I don't know if anyone wants to throw out a vote for either the blue or red Ginyus. I mean, I haven't really tested them against Black Krillin, so I don't know how those matchups will fall, but I'm sure people will let us know. Hopefully, if you're listening, you see us on DBZ United, let us know what you think about all this and, what decks you have found that work, what your builds are, and how you see the top of the meta right now, basically, because that's pretty much what we're talking about today.
Yep.
And so I guess we'll hit the last one before we sign off now. So Ginyu versus Namekian Piccolo. Namekian Piccolo is pretty clearly the most popular deck at this point. Whether it's the most successful of the top tier decks is up for debate, but it's certainly doing very well. So the question is, again, which Ginyu matches up well against Namekian Piccolo? How are you playing against it? And how do you beat it?
I would say pretty much any Ginyu. Any Ginyu has the advantage over Piccolo. If you're running Frieza, it's obviously going to help you. Even in a weaker Ginyu build, if you're running Frieza, it'll help you against Piccolo.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Even Red, I was playing against Kevin's Namekian Piccolo yesterday, and I went 3-0 against it just because I was dropping Frieza. And that's definitely one of my weaker Ginyu decks. Black has all the built-in banishment, so that should have no problem. Blue has the ability to keep the anger contained with masteries and everything, so they're pretty much guaranteed not to level against the blue Ginyu. And then Orange just once again hits hard. It's the most straightforward Ginyu. It just beats you down. So weighted close could be a problem, but other than that, I mean, I think you can do a lot of damage quickly against that.
Yeah, I mean, my vote for this is going to be completely off the rails here, but I think that against a Namekian Piccolo, Red Ginyu would probably have the best shot. I mean, given its inconsistencies, if it was playing a little bit more consistently, for the anger, it's a race, and being able to smack him around a little bit, crit his anger down, and hold him off while you're shooting up is definitely of value in this meta right now. And then, like Mark said with Frieza, if you knock out his ability to rejuvenate, forget about it. I mean, that's a huge portion of the anger that you're juggling around in Piccolo, unless you're ball bouncing. What was that?
It wasn't me.
I think that you might have heard on my end there was a motorcycle going down the street. So.
Steve ripping ass trying not to.
No, that was me trying to steal Mark's car.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be fixed now.
Oh my god.
So I'd like to be on the next one a little bit more, but I had some stuff going on here. But
yeah, that's fine. It's not a problem. So I guess we could probably just wrap up at that point. I'll say, I mean, Mark pretty much supported all the Ginyus against Namekian Piccolo, and it seems like Ginyu should play pretty well since Namekian Piccolo doesn't have a lot of critical effects until it gets to level 2, so it doesn't have a lot of answers to the allies.
It does have the one, double strike where you can shuffle
yep.
a ball in, and, it's one of my favorite things to do is when a Ginyu starts to set up, you just start double striking balls in. You level up to 2 and you crit them away. I mean, Piccolo can definitely do some crazy stuff. I mean, typically you're going to wall breaker a Piccolo on level 3. So if you have a Dragon Clan out or a Dragon Radar, just drop yourself down with the 2-ball or the level lowering ball. I think it's a 2-ball. And, lower your personality to 2 and just start critting things away. And even if they're on 3 or 4, just start gapping the life and just try and survive at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a valid strategy for the Namekian Piccolo. And the thing with Namekian Piccolo is there's also a few varieties now with the some people are playing the ball bounce. Do you think that plays better or worse against the Ginyus out there?
I think it depends on the pilot and what you draw. I feel ball bounce is very dependent on draws. I mean, like any deck, I guess, is dependent on draws. But at least with anger, you're consistently gaining anger. With ball bounce, you have to get the ball. You have to get a whatever ball on the table, and then you have to get another ball on the table. Then you have to hope it's not critted away before it's then used again. You know what I mean? So like, I'm talking about like Hurried Quest, Namekian Lift. You can just play a ball, put it back in your hand. It's almost the blue reprimand of Namekian. But what else is there? There's the energy block that can be sphered. I don't care too much for it. So yeah, I guess it really just depends on the pilot.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of ball bouncing.
That was a riveting
commentary. No. You know what? I appreciate that compliment.
All right.
But ball bouncing's never been my my favorite thing to do. I do like to, I don't know if ball bouncing's different from juggling them in and out of the deck. But I feel like there's a lot of cards that they try to put them into your hands to reuse them again. I don't really like that, but I do like to be able to shuffle and then pull back out, with Dragon Radar and stuff like that. And then I forgot the name of the Namekian attack because I'm not as familiar with Namekian, but the one that lets you copy the effects when it hits.
Oh, targeted strike. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, like that. If you drop the ball and then shuffle it back in and then Dragon Radar it back out and then targeted strike it, and it just becomes brutal. It's a fun thing that to do with like ball 5 because then you can keep drawing cards and keep the combat going. So I see merit behind that. I don't know if I would want to put it back into my hand constantly, but
yeah, that's
right.
I'm getting some feedback in your room there, Steve.
Oop.
Yes,
Sorry.
It's TJ. I'm not sure.
I don't know if it's me or not, but I think we're getting pretty close to wrapping this one up anyway, right, guys? Do you have anything else to add on the topics of Ginyu and the rest of the top tier of the meta? Any last words?
No, I just hope that we have a new meta coming next set. I hope Turles, Wheelo, and everybody else are top tier decks, man.
Lord Slug for president, guys.
That's right, Lord Slug for president.
Yep, he'll be our new Namekian Overlord, and we'll be patiently awaiting to see if that'll knock off Piccolo, Ginyu, and the rest of the top tier. So, all right, that should be it for our first DBZ United podcast. We don't know exactly what outlets we're going to have this on yet, but it's going to be places, and you'll be able to like, subscribe, keep getting more episodes. Mark says no, but I say yes. keep us in your hearts and minds, and keep listening to the DBZ
You can subscribe at heart.
Yeah, I'm
so that Mark doesn't know.
All right, guys. Thanks for
just for the
Steve, say goodbye.
I'm not going to say goodbye. I'm going to plug something first.
Nope, no plugging.
All right, so just to throw a couple other venues out that we are, broadcasting in. We do broadcast on Twitch, so that's twitch.tv/DBZ United, and you can follow us, or not follow us, but like join our Facebook group, which is Panini DBZ United, which this will probably go on as well as other venues. So that's all I have to say.
Oh, well, if we're doing plugs, we have the New Hampshire case event, July 18th in Double Midnight Comics in New Hampshire.
Yeah, that's in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I didn't have the info in front of me, so I'm just kind of trying to wing it there. Then we're also going to have one in Plainview, New York, which is Long Island. That's at Legendary Realms. It's going to be a case event hosted by me. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward stuff.
Yep, and those dates are tentatively in July, but we're going to wait for regionals to make sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I don't know if I said it. July 12th is the Long Island one.
Yep. Right.
Yep. All right, so that's it, guys.
All right, thanks for listening.
Bye.